It's the monthly practice development workshop today, and we've got for Baby's Sake joining us today. I know many home starts have connections or familiar with for Baby's Sake already, but just in case, in terms of context, they are a UK charity based in Hertfordshire. They work to empower parents to break cycles of domestic abuse, to transform the life chances of whole families and move forward in positive change, starting with the baby. And today we have Judith Rees joining from for Baby's Sake. She's the Chief Operating Officer, and she will talk about the work that they do, but more about the approach that they work with families and help us to think about like how we can actually better support families affected by domestic abuse. So without further ado, I will stop sharing and let you jump on, Judith. Over to you.
Thank you, Vicky, and thanks for inviting me to talk this morning. And as Vicky said, yeah, I'm Judith Rees, Chief Operating at the Trust, but I've been Director of Operations since 2015. And so I've got a PowerPoint slide I'm going to share with you, and it'd be good to know, in the chat, because it'd be good to use the chat this morning as we go along. Those of you that, sorry, just can't multitask while I'm doing a slideshow, who have heard of For Baby's Sake or indeed seen me in any presentations. We did do some work in 2020 during COVID with Home Start as well. So if any of you were there, but yeah, pop it in the chat. And if Vicky, if you can monitor the chat for me as well. So if anybody puts anything in, then please, let's make this interactive. We're quite a small group at the moment. Maybe others will join, but it is being recorded, isn't it? So you can share with others. Is that right, Vicky? Who are not here.
Yeah, so that's correct.
So yeah, really happy to take questions. Put your hand up as I move through the slides as well. We do have a couple of small breakout rooms, but depending how many are here, we might do that as a whole group if we don't get many more joining as well, so that we can all hear what everybody thinks as well. But yeah, today I'm going to speak around responding to domestic abuse in pregnancy and early years, and just bring some of the lessons from For Baby's Sake. We've been operating for 10 years at different sites across the UK, but also to think about the impact of babies and children of domestic abuse, but also using a trauma-informed therapeutic approach to working with domestic abuse. So I think I've covered those aims. That's what we're going to do. I'm also going to share some resources as well, and how you can support in practice to try and make some of it relevant to your roles. So emotional safety is really key as we move through this session, and some of the themes we'll be discussing are difficult and can be triggering in our work, as 1 in 4 of us may be impacted by domestic abuse. So please do check in with yourself throughout the session. It's okay to pause, step away, switch off your camera if you need to. Your emotional safety is really important to me as we go through this morning, and I'll stay on at the end of the session if anybody wants to speak to me as well. So just to get us going, in the chat, use the chat function to add 1 word how you're feeling this morning. I did some training last week. There was a lot of tired's. And again, I'll just let you pop those in there. What have we got, Vicky? I can't open my chat while I'm presenting. Oh, you're on mute, Vicky.
So sorry. Yeah, people saying that fine, scattered. Rebecca's feeling Christmassy. That's good. Helen as well. Nice. Lisa saying that's happy. The sun is out. Yeah, that makes a huge difference. I feel that as well. When it's a sunny day, it's definitely changed the tone. Oh, sorry, Lucy is feeling a bit unwell actually. So nice to sit back and listen for a change.
Yeah,
feel better soon, Lucy.
Yeah, definitely. I know all the news was full of flu this morning, wasn't it? About the rising flu cases as well. So yeah, do look after yourself. I'm feeling positive, and I'm really happy to be talking to you this morning. Worked alongside Homeside. Just a little bit about my background. It's in midwifery, health visiting, safeguarding children, family nurse partnership, working with teenage pregnancies before I came to the Trust 10 years ago. and have worked in those roles, as you can imagine, alongside Home Start, but particularly in Hertfordshire. So, which such a great service to work with when working with families. So at the For Baby's Sake Trust, our vision is a world where babies and children grow up free from the harm of domestic abuse. And our mission is to provide and promote therapeutic trauma-informed support that breaks cycles of domestic abuse and gives babies the best start in life. And this includes, like we are today, is cascading our findings and the work we do to other organisations and professionals, so we can cascade those and more babies can be reached. Just a reminder that from the Domestic Abuse Act in 2021, that the Act defines domestic abuse as not only physical violence, but also emotional, coercive and controlling behaviour, as well as economic abuse and more. This comprehensive definition ensures that various forms of abuse are recognised and addressed. And really importantly, in 2021, is that the Act recognised children, babies and children, it mentions children, but it includes babies and unborn babies, as victims of domestic abuse in their own right, and includes provisions to ensure that they receive the appropriate support and protection as well as those victims. And we know gendered wise, it's more likely to be women than men, but we know that both genders are impacted, and especially when we're talking about babies and children. So this was a great addition and also really enforced the work that we were doing to put the babies and children also getting their support in their own right. We did a YouGov survey earlier this year, which gave some of the same statistics that are nationally there, but also some further ones as well. So 1 in 5 children in the UK experience domestic abuse, often whilst they're in the womb. So in a class of 20 children at school, that's 5 children that are in a classroom or in a nursery or in an early years setting. And 1 in 3 parents have experienced a partner using abusive behaviour towards them. 40% of parents who experienced domestic abuse said it occurred during their baby's first 1,001 days, from pregnancy until the baby's 2nd birthday. And shockingly, 1 in 3 parents who experienced domestic abuse said they didn't know where to begin to look for help. Only 10% received professional help at that time. And I think that's why domestic abuse is for everyone to know, not to be the specialist support, but to know that there's someone that a parent can reach out to and then will be signposted to the appropriate support. So just being heard and knowing that a professional or someone working in the family is a safe person that they can disclose with, and they will get the right support at that time and be believed, the most important thing. So just looking at why does domestic abuse often start in pregnancy? Pregnancy and parenthood can increase vulnerability, disrupt existing dynamics, increase stress and create opportunities for control. Pregnancy is a trigger. Some parents may feel loss of control or intimacy. Abuse may then be used to assert power. Cultural and social factors are important, and in some contexts, pregnancy intensifies gendered expectations, reinforcing those patriarchal control in some cases. Stress and life changes. The perinatal period brings financial pressure, lifestyle changes, and emotional strain. These stresses can exacerbate existing tensions in relationships, and partners may respond with abuse and violence rather than healthy coping strategies. So again, not always the underlying factor of the domestic abuse, but can make it more prevalent in pregnancy. Isolation and dependency. Pregnancy often increases a woman's dependency on a partner for financial, emotional, or physical support. And this can be exploited, making it harder to leave or seek that support. Hidden nature of domestic abuse. Abuse during pregnancy is frequently underreported, as many parents, as you can imagine, fear stigma, blame, or repercussions for their baby and other children in the family, and still the belief that their baby may be taken from their care. Lack of perinatal support for emotional and mental health is such a difficult time for all parents, yet there's lack of significant support for both emotional and mental health still, even though, you know, there is more support than there was, and it's spoke about more, especially for both mums and dads. And up until recently, there's been very little engagement for fathers, but I'm really glad to see that has really increased, especially with the men's strategy, which has been recently released. And are you doing some work with dads at Home Start as well?
Yes, we do. We do have Dad Matters, but also through our usual home visiting,
That's what I thought, yeah.
have the whole family approach.
And Dad's Matter is a great, isn't it, that's got the funding behind it. Jealousy and rivalry with the baby, so a perceived loss of intimacy or control can trigger violence or coercion. Coercive control is a core pattern. Abuse is rarely just physical, and it's really helping people to understand that, as it often involves coercive control, a systematic effort to dominate another person's life. This includes restricting movements, monitoring communications, controlling finances, and isolating from families and friends, which can be the one that has the most impact on emotional and mental well-being. And pregnancy heightens vulnerability, making these tactics more effective or more impact, having more impact. Exploitation of dependency. Pregnancy increases a woman's reliance on her partner for financial, emotional, and physical support, and this can be exploited, reinforcing control and make it harder to leave. Attachment, insecurity, and fear of abandonment. Psychological research suggests that people with insecure attachment styles may fear being replaced or abandoned, and we hear that a lot with the fathers we work with on our programme. The baby symbolises a new bond that threatens their centrality in their relationship, leading to control or violent behaviour without the right support. So all of these are without the right support. Identity and role threats. Constant criticism of a woman's role as a partner or mother is a common tactic. This undermines confidence, reinforces dependence, and eroding autonomy. And I'm sure as I've gone through those slides, this is sort of just planting a baseline. You can think of families, or the families that Home Start has supported, where these are key factors. We like to use, and I'm sure you do within Home Start as well, the sort of power video, and this is one of the animations that we made to help our parents and other professionals to understand that sort of coercive control and what it feels like to be within the house behind closed door where there's domestic abuse.
Domestic abuse comes in all shapes and forms, including psychological, physical, emotional, sexual, financial, or stalking. To understand how these types of abuse may be controlling, let's take a look inside. The person controlling the house is often insecure. They can hide their insecurity through control, intimidation, threats, and violence. The fallout can be dangerous and leave people feeling like they're broken beyond repair. The need for power and control is woven into the very fabric of the relationship and becomes the underlying basis of the abuse. Coercive control, physical abuse, gaslighting, stalking. Lying beneath these is often shame, blame, denial, privilege. These create a drive to control, to define the roles in the relationship and make all of the decisions, and make their partner feel imprisoned in this dark world. To the outside world, everything may seem to be okay. But this is all deception. It's all about survival. At any moment, everything could come crashing down, piece by piece. Despite how it may appear on the surface, the partner feels isolated, and fears for the protection of themselves and their children. The relationship is filled with dark secrets. It desperately tries to keep all its failings hidden, but the all-consuming fear runs deep and is hard to conceal. The more the abuse is kept secret, the more difficult everything becomes. Chipping away at every aspect of life. Threatening collapse. There is another way. Specialist services can help you build a safe and resilient future. Take the first step. You will be believed.
Powerful video, but it actually helps parents when we use it to understand what might be there, but also what that must feel like for the babies and children as well. But actually at the end there's that hope and resilience, and there is another way, and with support for both co-parents, they can break that cycle, as our strapline is. If there's any comments about the video, anything it emerged for you, please put it in the chat, and then Vicky will or put your hands up. And just monitor that if there's anything, Vicky. So we also did some freedom of information requests, because to understand how many babies, how many children are impacted, we did one with the police, and what that found was that there was 187,750 babies present at police call-outs for domestic abuse annually. And these police call-outs go to health visitors, midwives and the health visitors. But that's a lot of babies that are present when those, domestic abuse call-outs. But this information isn't readily collected, and it was only because we did the information request that we were able to get those figures. And this was picked up by the Metro and a lot of the media as well, because it just shows where the resources need to go as part of our policy work. That's what we want to highlight, how many babies and children, and that we need the real early intervention to support parents to break that cycle early. And within social care, approximately 50,000 babies are referred to children's social care in England each year where there's domestic abuse as a factor. So again, lots of babies, and we've got more information on that. If anyone, Vicky, you're interested in any of the stats that sit behind that, and in which areas that is as well. So this is just a snapshot of that we did, but happy to share further. So that's quite a few heavy slides to start to understand why we need to work in this way. Chris, I wonder how many is there of us on the call?
It's 14, including the three of us. So maybe 2 groups would be a good number.
2 groups, yeah. Perfect. So if you could go into the breakout groups for 10 minutes and just think together, reflect together on how you feel when you think about domestic abuse in pregnancy, and what emotions emerge most strongly for you. Is that okay?
Yeah. So Chris is going to
just setting them up now, so it'll be 1 second.
You'll fly away in just 10 minutes, and should give you enough time just to think together about what that brings up for you.
Just while Chris is doing that, I think we've got 2 comments in the chat. Lindsay is saying that there's a very powerful video. I think colleagues agree to that, and it will be useful for volunteer training.
So
we can we can definitely add to the resource bank under the full prep course. Cruz is saying that there is often a concern about being believed, as the perpetrator can have a successful facade within the community. So yeah, it's about like whether they're being believed. That's quite often happen.
It is so often that's what happens. Yeah, absolutely. So hopefully as we move through the presentation, we'll see actually by that person engaging with support, we can.
Shall I open the rooms?
Yes, please. Thanks, Chris.
Okay.
But thanks for those comments. Hopefully you found that interesting to have those breakout rooms. Has anyone got any burning want to give a highlight from their room, or would you prefer to put it in the chat? Anyone want to come off mic?
I think in our room, Judith, I think it was just, I mean, lots of great discussions, just hearing from the home starts. And I think, yeah, we talked about so many mixed emotions, really, you know, the fear of, you know, what might happen if you say something and your baby, perhaps people might think baby will be taken away, like hope that things will get better when the baby's born, you know, concerns that actually you need the support because you're having a baby, just, yeah, so many different emotions that people came up with. I can see how it would be a really kind of confusing time because that's on top of all the hormones in pregnancy and so on anyway.
Lovely, thanks, Helen. Yeah, and I'm sure that was in both groups as well, and that's why we put it, because it is such an emotional time, is it? And so we can really see why it's so hard for women to reach out, or for expectant dads as well, who might be using abusive behaviours and want that support. It's such a difficult time, but also, as we're going to see, a time of hope, time of motivation, and a time where, with the right support, things can get better for the unborn baby. So the impact of DA on the unborn baby, and why focus, we've said a little bit, why focus on 0 to 2. I'm just going to tell you a little bit what around For Baby's Sake as well, for those that don't know. But we know that the first 1,001 days are crucial to a baby's life, with or without domestic abuse, but experiencing domestic abuse impacts life chances for babies and children. And evidence suggests exposure pre-birth until the baby's second birthday is the time, because of the baby's brain growing, can have the greatest impact. And we know that 30% of domestic abuse escalates in pregnancy. Interventions at this stage can prevent years of abuse and harm. So offering support, like For Baby's Sake, during pregnancy and in the early years, can harness parents' motivation to protect and care for their baby and make the changes necessary to give their baby, their children, a great life, the best life for them. In our programme, For Baby's Sake, 90% of babies on our programme achieve their 1-year developmental milestones. 96%, we've seen a reduction in severe levels of domestic abuse across our families, and 2/3 of families avoided escalation into care proceedings or stepped down below that threshold in social care. So what is For Baby's Sake? For those that don't know, our parents' voices will give the picture better than I can describe it. So I'm going to share our animation, and then I'll talk to you a little bit more about our approach, and then how we can build and you can take lessons from it into your practice.
The first few years are so important. Who you are as a person is set up in those first few years.
Both my mum and dad probably had their own challenges growing up. Certainly my mum did.
My dad was an alcoholic. He was very angry, very depressed.
Things were good and then they'd be bad, and there was a lot of instability.
I was a teenage delinquent, stealing cars, selling drugs, just making a nuisance of myself.
I learnt to be quiet and keep things inside, and then really escaped in my imagination, and that's where I came alive.
I met my girlfriend. It was kind of like in the movies.
It turned my world upside down. We had that bond.
And within 2 months of that, she was pregnant. I think we both kind of went into panic mode.
It was very stressful. The idea of being homeless and pregnant. Where are we going to get the money?
We started having quite bad arguments.
And he put his hands around my neck until I couldn't breathe. Which is what led us into For Baby's Sake.
I kind of came into the programme thinking that I might just broken beyond repair.
The practitioner, She helped me find so much clarity. It triggered me into a very dark place. Obviously, we were dealing with domestic abuse, but it didn't feel like we were just pointing the finger.
He was very respectful, listened very carefully to what I was saying. How on earth are we going to have a kid? And just helped me come up with practical solutions.
To be able to work through these self-destructive patterns, make some peace with the past, putting tools in place to keep me safe and to keep him safe too.
At every stage we had someone that really was trained and knew what they were doing, explaining to us what our baby was going through. And we had more space for us to figure out our relationship.
It's allowed me to heal and come into myself. What are you doing? It's given me confidence to be a good mum.
I can be a bit less erratic now. I can live a normalish life and have a family.
He has two parents that want to do whatever it takes to be the best parents they can be for him.
He's had the best start in my family as far back as anyone can remember, and that is not an accident.
I don't know how many times the two of us have said thank God for baby's sake. It's been life-changing.
Wants to play again. So what's really nice about the parents who helped us with that animation, that was probably 4 or 5 years ago. The little boy is 7 now, Sustain Change. Their mum is an ambassador for the programme, and they safely separated while they're on the programme. And I think that's one of the messages, is that For Baby's Sake is where both co-parents come onto the programme in pregnancy because they want to co-parent, whether together they're in a relationship or not. Our programme isn't about keeping families together when that's not the right or the safe thing to do. But they come on their individual journey. They both have their own therapeutic practitioner, and really it's the unborn baby and other children are the motivator for them both want to go on their journeys with their practitioners of breaking those patterns, as you heard in that video, of that intergenerational pattern, as that dad said, of the histories that they had. So not only learn about the domestic abuse, what they need to put in place to regulate their emotions, but also recover from their own trauma histories, that many of the parents and many other programs now that are working with those that perpetrate abuse, that those often men and women have been victims in their own right, in their own childhood as well. So it's really giving them the time and space to be able to recover from that as well. And so those patterns in intergenerational are not continued. So the criteria for Baby's Sake for the areas that we work, which is currently Blackpool in the northeast, Durham, Darlington, Bedfordshire, Luton, Hertfordshire, Essex, and some boroughs in London, Haringey, Byborough, Westminster, RBKC, and some of the other boroughs, a few families. So that's where we're currently working. And it's got to be domestic abuse, and they both come on to the programme. If one parent disengages, we continue working with a parent that continues to engage with us, so we don't victimise that person again by not continuing to work. And we work up until the baby's 2nd birthday. Some families don't work that long, and we work along the continuum of need. So from team around the family right up into care proceedings. And if the family are in care proceedings, we'll continue to work with them, hopefully. And many babies do, even when they get removed, return back to the care with the intensive support from For Baby's Sake and multi-agency team around. Most of our referrals come from social care, unborn baby assessments, referred, or from safeguarding midwives, but we take self-referrals and from any professions that are working with the family. We deliver a hybrid method. In most places, Blackpool is mostly face-to-face, but others hybrid, so face-to-face and online video sessions that we learned how to adapt and deliver very successfully during COVID. One nice thing that COVID gave us to be able to do that, but we've returned to this hybrid method of delivery now. And you can just see they move through a modular session of real risk assessment, trauma-informed assessment phase at the beginning, I'll tell you a little bit more about the attachment focused parent to keep baby at the centre of it while they're going through this sort of recognising domestic abuse, but also the behaviour change, really equipping them with tools to regulate their emotions, because we know if parents are able to regulate their emotions, then that's how babies and children learn to regulate their own. They need that support from their parents to do that. Healthy expressions of feelings really underpins, and inner child is that deeper therapeutic work that we do with families, but all along building self-esteem and self-worth, and really helping them have a sense of self, that many of them come onto the programme not really knowing who they are or indeed loving themselves. So recently, and many of you may be aware, but the power of knowledge that we're obtaining from the neuroscience, which is the study of the brain and nervous system and how this impacts a person's behaviour. And in more recent years, there's been a growing interest in how this can be applied to early childhood development and how experiences can shape development, and are definitely starting in the womb. I'm going to show you another video, and this is not one of ours, but this is something that I think is coming to Homestart, or is there. Some of you maybe already have it. Is the Royal Foundation, the Centre for Early Childhood Explainer series. So these are the 7 films with the really explainer information, which is great. We put it into our training for our therapeutic practitioners as well. Really explains in how to use them with parents. So they're not specifically for domestic abuse, but what they're really good when there is domestic abuse, or you think it is there, to help parents understand how they can support their baby's brain development, and then it sort of triggers thoughts about what might be happening within the relationship that they need support with. So this is just one of them that talks about how we grow an emotional, healthy brain.
Throughout our lives, our brains play a role in everything we do. They are responsible for our thoughts, feelings, and emotions, for the choices we make, the way we treat others, how we cope with life's ups and downs, make friends, and fall in love. An emotionally healthy brain therefore helps us lead a healthy, happy life. And when you add it all up, that's what shapes our future society. Our brains continue to develop throughout our lives, but they do most of their growing when we're very young, which is why early childhood, the time from pregnancy to 5, matters so much. During this time, they produce an astonishing 1 million new connections every second, the fastest period of brain development in our entire lives. You might think that this happens automatically, according to a set of instructions. But in fact, our brains are constantly growing and adapting in response to our interactions with the outside world. And the most important interactions we have are with the adults around us. For example, when our young brain hears an adult speaking, it starts to build the connections we need to understand what they're saying and eventually to use words of our own. And it's the same for all the skills we are developing, even the things that aren't as easy to spot. Things like how willing we are to trust someone, or our ability to understand what someone else might be feeling. Things known as social and emotional skills. Skills which, as adults, we use on a daily basis. When we have adults who care for us, cuddle us, play with us, and show joy in us, this makes us feel safe, valued, and understood, and provides the steady emotional nourishment that our brains thrive on. Put simply, sensitive, responsive care is the key to developing an emotionally healthy brain. On the other hand, repeated experiences that feel very stressful or threatening can encourage our brains to grow in ways that can be limiting, meaning we might find it harder to adapt to life as an adult. Of course, with love and support, we can still overcome a difficult start in life. But the brain we develop when we're young forms the basis of the brain we have when we grow up. So, early childhood really is a golden opportunity to build the foundations for a happy, healthy life.
I'll get rid of YouTube. I love that video, and I just think it's all 7 of them. I've got another one to play as well, but I know that you're going to embed those, aren't you, Vicky? I think into practice as well for training. But you can see how you can use that with families to really open up, sort of conversations about how important that pregnancy and what's going on for the baby and how important it is. And so our biological sensitivity to environmental influences varies across the life course, as the video says, making the timing of when we encounter these really important. And the sensitivity of developing biological systems is typically greatest in the prenatal period and decreases over the course of childhood into adulthood. And as the video says, just as negative experience and exposures are more likely to have harmful impacts in early childhood, everything we do to protect, there's always hope, and it can change with those positive impact and support. And early experiences and interactions shape early cognitive, social and emotional abilities that form the foundations of lifelong health and well-being, and most important, to be able to build relationships, because they're key to those connections, which is what Homestar's about. So just a recap on the developing baby, for those that might know or not know, by 23 weeks in pregnancy, a baby can hear sounds from the outside world, including your voice. So you can imagine that even in that early stages of pregnancy, raised voices conflict, that the baby's starting to hear and respond to those noises. And that eyes open between 26 and 28 weeks. At full-term birth, the average baby's brain weighs 400 to 500 grams. And then by 1 year, it's doubled in size to 1,000 grams. If you compare that to an adult's brain, which is only 1.3 to 1.5, you can see how many networks, how much activity, how much that baby is growing in that time. And just another fact is that babies' brains process information about 16 times more slowly than adults' brain. And this is why it takes time for the baby to respond to stimulation. So again, it's really important. One of those videos from the Royal Foundation is around pacing, why we need to support parents to slow down and follow the baby's lead as well to support their development. Just a diagram to show the sort of build-up of toxic stress. So if someone's under sustained stress in pregnancy, and especially domestic abuse, we know can cause this, then there's high levels of cortisol, which can travel through the placenta, which is there in the middle, through to the baby. And so the baby can, without support, swim in toxic hormones, which means it's then born on red alert, and so then more difficult to support the parent to do that. So by helping parents understand, calm those waves around the baby by reducing stress however they can and safely, it's really going to support them, but also support the unborn baby. Some of the impacts on unborn babies from domestic abuse are low birth weight, miscarriage, prematurity, and that baby and endocrine system set to red alert. So again, it's just knowing that some of these factors, so if you're working with parents, doesn't mean it is the underlying cause, but it's always thinking, I wonder what's going on in the relationship. Does this person need support? Do I need to open up a conversation? Not going to go through this, but you can see the vast array of impacts on older children from domestic abuse, from that sort of anxiety and worry, sleep problems, being hypervigilant and hyperactive, or on the other end of low esteem, confidence, withdrawal, and quite often we see that gendered, don't we? With girls being more withdrawn and boys being more aggressive. Some learning from reviews for professionals is that from the child safeguarding practice reviews, I don't know if you cover these or are aware of them, but it's around often facing the challenges of hearing enacted upon around children's voices and babies' voices. And 40% of all child safeguarding practice reviews, which are when a baby is seriously harmed has died in the care of their parents, and 40% were in the under twos, which is why it's so important to protect and give the support to families where they are in this 1001 critical days. And these reviews often find that children weren't always seen often enough, over-reliance on the voice of parents or parents explain the child's views, opportunities to interact with children through play, understanding behaviours and observations were often missed. So really seeing the adult, which is really important, but actually not seeing what's going on with that interaction or what's going on for the child in that home, which can be observed without actually asking questions. And that professionals made assumptions around the child's experience, wishes and feelings without actually being more curious. And factors which contributed were identified as time, high allocations, turnover of workers, but also one of the big ones is not communicating when we're worried about a baby or child between organisations, professionals working with families. So the professionals' responses to domestic abuse in healthcare settings are critical. So antenatal care provides rare opportunities for professionals to identify abuse. And so when working in this time, it is really thinking about where those hidden cases where might be, and because of the victim's fear of you've talked about, of disclosure, and often the father not being visible. Early interventions matter, as we've spoke about, and that generational impact. Abuse during pregnancy just doesn't affect the parent, it shapes the infant's emotional development, attachment patterns and future relationships, as we spoke about. So again, just coming back to this really important time to support parents and pick up where domestic abuse is in the 1001 days. Really that link to, and I'm sure this is what you work a lot with parents, where there's parents' mental health in the early years. And one of the surveys that we did found that half of parents say they experience a rise in mental health or emotional challenges in pregnancy in the first 1001 days. And 1 in 6 parents said that becoming a parent negatively affected their mental health or emotional well-being. And nearly 1 in 10 dads said they turned to alcohol, substance misuse during this time. And over 1 in 3 parents overall reported more conflict in their relationships during this time as well. And that stems from parental conflict to domestic abuse. And this was a survey that we did 3 months ago. So still with all the support, this is still an area that is needed for our parents in society. Just looking at the time. This slide is really talking about how important it goes back to a video and how we work it for Baby's Sake. It's really thinking about the fathers and the trauma-informed support for fathers that use abusive behaviours. One size doesn't fit all when working with domestic abuse, but often the victims of domestic abuse, those experiencing, say they want support for that person causing harm in that relationship, and that hope that you spoke about, Helen, about once the baby's born, it will get better. But what we know is that they want support, and if they are offered support and identified, then it gives more insight about whether that person's ready to change, has got the right motivations at the moment, and gives that person then experiencing abuse the chance to be able to act on that. But also that we know, and the research tells us when it's safe to do so, the relationship with fathers is really important for babies and children as well. So it's giving every opportunity to be able to intervene and give that support when necessary, whatever spectrum it's on, in parental conflict up to that domestic abuse as well. That's just about a bit of the evidence, but at Home Start, that's the way you're working already anyway, which is great. Click. So just stop that a minute. This is a video that we made. We did a project again around 2021 with Safer Beginnings. And this is a father talking about his journey to show the change that he made.
My mum was very young. She'd come out of care. She was abused when she was a child. My dad was the same as well. And unfortunately, when I was born, you had 2 young people with a really rubbish upbringing, trying to bring up me. I saw a lot of domestic violence that I wouldn't remember, and it went on right until he left, really, up until the age of 12. It's a spiral effect, isn't it? My dad was an abuser, and unfortunately, I followed suit with domestic abuse towards women.
Most of the parents that I work with who are using abusive behaviour and they want that abusive behaviour to stop, that often leaves a mark on them as well after they've hurt somebody.
You may not think that you're being abusive if you're not physically hurting someone, but the harm could be happening in different ways, such as emotional harm or being controlling.
I recognised my behaviour had been abusive by the way my older children were growing up and how much their lives had been ruined because of my mistakes, really. 2 or 3 of them were in the care system, which didn't do them any good. I've got a lot of weight on my shoulders from my other children for how they've been brought up. It was only when I had my 2 youngest that I could have carried on being abusive, or I could actually do something right for my children and give them a better life. That my 2 youngest were my last chance, really, to prove that I can be a good dad.
I think there's a lot of stigma and a lot of shame attached to experiencing abuse within a relationship, but also if you're the person that's hurting somebody in your family, so it makes it really, really difficult to tell others. Sometimes they're scared of what their friends and family might think, sometimes they're scared of losing their partner, sometimes they're scared of social workers becoming involved and fears around what might happen to their baby, but ultimately they're making a choice and they're feeling like they want to tell somebody because they want their baby to be safer and they want their family to be safer.
I had to accept that I was the main problem with a lot of my past behaviours. You've got to admit it to yourself before you admit it to anyone else. You can come out of every excuse and blame. I could blame my dad until I'm blue in the face, but the only person that can change my behaviours is me. One of the tools I learned was to empathise with my son's mother, realise about her emotions and thoughts and feelings. Eventually, it enabled us to get on as parents. It's taken a lot of help and support to make it work, but it has worked, you know. We are co-parenting and getting on, and both of our children, they're happy, and you don't have to be together for them to be happy. They adjust to things like that. You know, I want them to feel that coming to mums or dads is a safe place.
A service like For Baby's Sake takes a whole family approach, which means that both parents are given the opportunity to overcome the domestic abuse for the person who's experiencing the abuse, but also the person using the abusive behaviour.
Basically, you need to seek help. If you're feeling down and you need to talk to someone, talk to someone. The worst thing to do is keep frustration inside. And if you've got someone to talk to, that goes a long way. If you feel that you need help with your behaviours, there's places where you can seek it.
So if you recognise you're in an abusive relationship or you recognise that you're using abusive behaviours, then it's time to seek help and support.
You might be really scared to do that, but ultimately it's going to make your family safer.
I think you'll probably agree it's a powerful story from one of the dads. And the Safer Beginnings series, there's about 4 videos that we've made with around those that are experiencing the abuse as well, and they're all on our website, and I'll share all of the links afterwards as well, so they can also be used. And it was a great piece of partnership working with 16 partners when we made those films. So this is the explainer films that I spoke to you earlier about the Royal Foundation, and that's the explainers. So I just wanted to put that on there, but I know it will be coming to you. What I love is that they've created the acronym of connection, repetition, experiencing a change, actionable guidance, tap into their intrinsic motivation, empathy, and strength-based. And actually why we became one of the early adopters as well is because it just fits with the way we work in a trauma-informed therapeutic way with domestic abuse as well. It's what's needed. So, and this is another one of their films, which is how we support a child's social and emotional development. It's a short one.
As adults, we often think that learning looks like this. But actually, the most important period of learning in our entire lives looks like this. The time from pregnancy to the age of 5 is when we begin to develop the skills we need to do things like managing our emotions and nurturing our relationships. During this time, the way a young child develops is shaped by the adults around them. Across thousands of little interactions during these vital years, we are helping them to develop the skills they'll need to function and thrive in this world, laying the foundations for everything that will follow. In these short videos, we'll unpack some of the most important ways that adults can support a child's social and emotional development. Because what can seem simple or even silly at this age has the power to be life-changing.
Always scared it's going to jump onto YouTube and not be a good one. But yeah, they're really good, and that's one of the things with being an early adopter for those films is that we share them, and they just fit so beautifully with our work as well. Just looking at some of the tools that we use to support that connection in For Baby's Sake, I know you might be familiar with them, is the newborn behaviour observation. I don't know if anybody's trained or you work with a lot of health assistants are now trained with using it, but it really helps parents. It's from the Brazelton, helps parents understand that their babies are born communicating and that their infant's communication is not random. And parents and partners who have an embo session tend to feel close to their baby, feel they know their baby better, trust their practitioner, have an enhanced engagement and relationship with their baby, and feel more confident in reading their baby's signals and cues. So it's really a great tool, and that's what we like to share. I mean, our practitioners are all trained to deliver this antenatally in the baby's first 12 weeks. Even if you don't use that resource, what I would say is go to the Brazelton Centre website. They've got a really good, what's it called? Leaflet, animated leaflet that you can flick through, and I think you can download them as well, and it's really good to share with parents generally, but because it's one of the outcomes that we measure, so we put a lot into the programme about supporting babies and the baby's first language or the communication skills. So now moving on to think about domestic abuse in the last sort of 20 minutes in terms of having that difficult conversation. And I was going to go into breakout rooms, but I think what I'm going to do is move through the slides and then leave some moments before we all come together at the end, Vicky, if that's okay. But as we move through this, is thinking about how do you feel about discussing domestic abuse in your roles or those that you support? And again, it's always talking about what emotions emerge most strongly for you. So it's, as you spoke about earlier, how do you open up those conversations? I'm going to skip past that one. When we're thinking about this, and on our website as well, and they've been around since 2011 from the Royal College of Psychiatrists, is around what are the barriers for professionals or anyone having conversations. And we've also got these for those seeking support and those that are experiencing abuse. So you can download them from our website. But it's really thinking, and I think it was some of those things that you said earlier, Helen, sort of fear of offending. What if I open up a conversation that's going to make things worse because it may get better, and it's too complex? What if I open Pandora's box? Time constraints. I don't know what I'm going to do if someone discloses. But I think it's really having the confidence that actually, as we said earlier, what people, those that are experienced or using one, is to be heard, listened to, and you don't necessarily have all the answers, but it's then actually, I know services that I can refer to that can help you. So it's not everyone doesn't have to be an expert in domestic abuse, but everyone, I believe, needs to be confident to be able to receive the information and let that person know that their feelings are validated, that you've heard them, you believe them, and that you're a safe person that they can come back to, because right now might not be the right time. As we know, with the cycle of abuse, that comes to the point when someone wants to separate and then get the sort of honeymoon period and everything's okay again, and the cycle continues. So that might not be the right time. And we also know that the time of separation from domestic abuse can be the most risky time as well. So it's always not encouraging anyone to leave at a point without specialist support to make sure there's that real robust safety planning in place. But all organisations or people don't need to be experts in that, just need to know where to signpost for that person to be able to get that support. But they can speak about domestic abuse, and it's okay to talk about it. One of our other resources on our website is a parental relationship spectrum, which shows the continuum. It's A4, and it can download from a healthy relationship through that parental conflict and then through domestic abuse into the sort of high-end coercive control, where it's often physical abuse, but it's the coercive control that drip feeds that has the most impact on people's emotional and mental well-being. And we know, and I'm not going into it today, but the high rates of suicide for those both experiencing and using domestic abuse. But what this also shows is where does the child's continuum of need in terms of support that they need from early help services like Home Start or intensive support, or that specialist assessment within social care. On the reverse of this is, we use a lot of is questions that people can use to open up conversations. A lot of our work is underpinned by emotional motivational interviewing and active listening techniques. And a lot of people will shut down and say no if people asked about domestic abuse, because that shame and stigma that we spoke about. But questions like, what aspects of your relationship trouble you? What would you change if you had the opportunity? How understanding is your partner? How safe do you feel at home and in your relationship? Where's the joy in your life? Just some of those questions, and you can see there's some other additional bits about how you can expand those conversations, but it is really opening up conversations in a different way that will support parents to then talk about their relationship and where they might need support. And also, what would your children say about life at home as well? What would your baby say? What would your baby tell me? Those conversations, if it's leading into that area, rather than going straight into, is there domestic abuse? Because that quite often we know will shut the conversation down. So that's a resource that you can use and upload as well. That's free for you to have, and I'll share the links. One of the other things we put together is how to have trauma-informed conversations, and especially not just when there's domestic abuse, but it's helping those having the conversations to understanding trauma, its effects on memory and behaviour and emotions for those that we're supporting. Really being mindful, what having a trauma-informed conversation is being mindful of triggers. We all have triggers, but they're different for everyone. But if we think everyone we work with might have triggers and trauma past, then we're more likely to be more considerate about the conversations and the questions that we're having, and checking in all the time, mainly checking in with body language as well. So it's often what somebody's not telling you as much as what they are telling you, and to recognise when that's happening, when someone shuts down and not able to make eye contact, etc. But also having that non-judgmental reassuring conversations, and letting parents lead those and lead them at their own pace, and not pushing for further information when it's not forthcoming, and show understanding through attentive responses, and be able to reflect back what somebody's saying. Really important, and part of your service is building trust as well, and being transparent about when you can't share something. So you're respecting confidentiality, but really those sort of boundaries around when you would have to right up front, which I know your service does. Consistency, so always following through with promises as well, and being honest if somebody's missed something in a session, and to go back and say, last time, especially where, go back, what am I saying? So when there's a session and then you go into reflective supervision and then think, oh yeah, that person said that, having the confidence to be able to go back, and last week when you said that, can you just tell me a little bit more about that? Do you want to talk about that? And so it is okay to go back and visit things, because again, that builds trust, because that person knows that they've said something, but actually it wasn't followed through, but they were trying to open up a conversation. Really using that, empowering, providing choices, encouraging that autonomy. And as always, as we've said throughout this, or I hope it's portrayed, it's about the hope, it's the strength base, really validating their courage and resilience when someone does start to open up conversations about things that are not going well in their relationship, or they're needing support for. One of the other tools, a set of tools that we've developed, and again on our website, and it's a whole session really, is on trauma insight tools. And there's one around the adversity wheel, which I am going to show you, that actually, if we acknowledge those we're working with trauma histories, we're able to support them so the intergenerational cycle doesn't continue, so they don't go into parenthood carrying their traumas, that unresolved trauma. Trauma's fine, but it's the unresolved trauma into the next generation. There's also a short film and a handout on working with children that have been traumatized, but also working with parents that have been traumatized as well, and how you can have a framework about how you support those. But the one I'm going to show you is a short video around the adversity wheel.
Adverse childhood experiences, also known as ACEs, are stressful events occurring in childhood. Traumatic events of the earliest years of infancy and childhood are not lost, but like a child's footprints in wet cement, are often preserved lifelong. Time does not heal the wounds that occur in those earliest years. Time conceals them. They're not lost, they're embodied. The root of many physical, mental, and emotional conditions can stem from childhood. Exposure to multiple traumatic events will have implications on how an individual might live their life. Our behavior, thoughts, and feelings may be linked to these unacknowledged traumas and can create emotions such as shame, worthlessness, feelings of depression, and anger. Dissociation is a natural response to traumatic experiences. It happens more intensely in response to prolonged and repeated trauma, when the brain disconnects from what is happening and to escape distress. When this occurs, we can subconsciously create fantasies, our basic capacity underlying and shaping our thoughts, dreams, symptoms, and patterns of defense. Emotional vulnerability for many people can bring up feelings of being exposed, judged, fear of being hurt, humiliated, and shamed. Infancy and early childhood are developmental periods when emotional development is particularly malleable and highly affected by trauma exposure. Unhelpful coping strategies may be adopted to deal with unresolved issues, resulting in feelings of worthlessness, loneliness, and a fragile sense of self. Fear of being unlovable is a shame-based fear of being unworthy of love. A coping mechanism for not feeling worthy of love would be to distance ourselves from loving relationships of any sort. Unfortunately, the cycle continues if trauma isn't processed, resulting in emotionally unavailable parenting. Through acceptance, empathy, and a therapeutic relationship, as well as an opportunity to tell our story and process our trauma histories, we can begin to look inward to discover what is required to support recovery, sustainable change, and the opportunity for future generations. There is another way. Break the cycle.
And that's an A4, again, resource that you can download, again, with really helpful questions on the back. So even if that's sort of for background information as well, what might be lying behind some of the mental health, emotional well-being of the parents. Vicky?
No, just giving a thumbs up.
Thank you. And lastly, the last few minutes before I bring us together, I know I've talked a lot at you, is our emotional safety plans, which I think you'll find a useful resource. So we've again made these with the Safer Beginnings project. in co-production with parents, and it's to use in pregnancy, birth and beyond, and it can be quite beyond, and sits alongside a birth plan or within this time, but it's about the emotional support that somebody might need, so what they might need to support them, what they might need to prepare for, external professional support they can access, word items that will help them cope, so what they need to feel safe, and there's 4 diagrams of these, so that parents can pick whichever. They can either do them together or they can do them separately. So this doesn't have to be used just with domestic abuse, but for those parents especially that might have had a difficult birth beforehand, or they've got triggers because of the histories of traumas that they've had, it means they can write them and use, I'll show the film. There's different emojis on the back. So the idea, this is one of them, the heart one, what the baby needs. So they can then share them with other professionals or midwives that are working with them, and especially if they're going to labour or the early weeks, what they need, what words are going to trigger them, what smells, what certain things are going on, what music plays, etc. Because it's such an emotional time in pregnancy, birth and beyond. This film will just show you how you can use them with your parents.
Having a baby can feel like you're on an emotional roller coaster, especially if you've had difficult or traumatic experiences in the past or on the way to becoming a parent.
Because I'd experienced an abusive relationship, my number one concern about the birth was him being present and taking control of the situation when I was at my most vulnerable.
I wanted more children, but due to the traumatic experience I had with my firstborn, I didn't feel like I could go through it again.
When my youngest child was born, I had to sit back and think about mum's thoughts and feelings, and I was really worried that I wouldn't get emotionally attached to my new child.
I had 4 miscarriages, so when I got pregnant again that 5th time, I felt on the one hand really thrilled, but also quite fearful and anxious about losing the pregnancy.
We've created a tool to help you think about and note down what you might need from the people who will support you along this journey, like your midwife, doctor, and birth partner. It's called an emotional safety plan.
Knowing that everyone was fully aware of my situation as it was gave me lots of reassurance and confidence, because I knew I wasn't being judged and they were all there to help me and my baby.
My second labour and birth were worlds apart from my first. When I knew what I wanted and I shared that information with the healthcare professionals, that was when I knew I was in control.
The birth went really well because we was thinking about each other's needs and what the baby needed too.
It was massively reassuring to me to have support from my husband and my midwife. They were both really great at helping me manage my anxiety and ultimately to be able to get on and enjoy the pregnancy.
Download the plan, then fill it out with the things you need to help you feel safe, calm, and supported. Then share it with the people who will be with you through pregnancy, birth, and beyond.
So take a look at those, that might be helpful. You can write on them as well. You can download them or you can electronically write on them. There's also there for professionals as well that you can use to sort of debrief or take into supervision, to think about those things that you're impacted by the work that we do as well with families. There's our website. That's where you can see lots of the tools. I will put some of those links into an email with these PowerPoint slides at the end, but lots of other resources that I've not shared today as well, including lots of mindful exercises and relaxation as well. So I'm going to stop sharing and just bring us back. It's 22. So hopefully with us all back in the group, any comments, questions? Don't know if there's anything in the chat, Vicky.
Nothing so far. Just anybody who's got any questions for Judith before we close the session?
Can I just say I thought that was amazing. Thank you very much for the presentation, and just so much to think about and share, and across all services, not just within Home Start. So thank you.
Thank you. That's great feedback. And I know I have put quite a lot into the slides because we just want to share so much with you. So I'm glad it'll be really helpful and take time to sort of digest a lot that I've covered there. Thank you.
I was just going to say, oh, sorry, Tanya. Same. Thank you, Judith. Yeah, really useful. And Tanya and I are from Homestart UK, and we're hoping next year to review some of the, domestic abuse resources that we've got available on our intranet. So we'll go through everything you've shared and the links, and yeah, really useful. But I really enjoyed the session. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry,
Yeah.
Tanya. I don't know if you've got anything to add. But...
Yeah, and really happy when you come to that time to support and look at if there's any other new resources, because we've just been doing some work with the Breastfeeding Network around a resource for their helpline staff as well. So really happy to be involved with that as well with you.
That'd be great. Thank you.
I was just going to sort of echo, I think it's really useful, and the resources particularly. And I think particularly the resource about how to have those difficult conversations, because I think it's that opening thing that's very difficult. And I think it's difficult for staff, but I suspect for volunteers, and also that's, feeling a little bit uncomfortable about broaching into some of those areas about relationships. So I think that'll be a great resource has a lot of practical help for us. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
Can I just add one further point? I think towards the end, when you said in terms of reviewing, I really like the emphasis you put on being honest about reflecting and then being open about, actually, I missed that cue, and revisiting, and the importance of how that helps develop relationships with whoever we're working with. I think that's a really important message to be sharing with volunteers as well as with staff, because we can get so embroiled in what we're discussing that actually it's afterwards you think, oh yeah, wait a minute.
Yeah, were they trying to just give me a little nugget and I missed it, and it's okay. That's we reinforce that all the time in the training with our own teams as well. So it's so easy, isn't it, like you say,
and not just the verbal clues, but also noting body language or lowering of eyes or whatever, where you realize you've actually hit a difficult area. So thanks for that.
Thanks, Pooh.
Yeah, I'll definitely echo what my colleagues are saying in terms of the practical resources. Is something that would help with the conversation going. I can see some of the questions not just specifically about domestic abuse, but it's more about the general support, being curious as a professional, as a volunteer, like what's actually happening in the home and what's happening with the family. So it'd be quite useful to open up conversation. Just a gentle reminder, just while Helen and Tanya's here, if anybody sort of disclose anything about domestic abuse to you, the safeguarding policy is there to support you to think about, like, what should I do? What do I do next? And also to speak to your safeguarding lead in your local Homestart, and also your local authority as well, if you're not quite sure like what to do. I think that's I know everybody knows that, just a gentle reminder. That's the resources there to support you. Okay. I'll just quickly share the evaluation code. Because if you can just quickly share some of your feedback with us, that would be very helpful, especially what you want to see next in 2026. I can't even say that's 2026. I can't believe this year is finishing. The domestic abuse topic is actually suggested by people in this group during the year. So we think that, it would be good to bring in for Baby Sick. So any topics that you can think of, either we can do soft facilitating it here, or we can share it with the safeguarding groups to think about for the future webinars, workshops, etc. Just while people are doing that, I'm sure you'll all join us to thank you to you, Judith, for your time and effort and sort of planning this as well, with lots of like information and sort of useful insight and knowledge about the topic. I'm sure there will be lots of things that we will come back to you for, like once we digest it. And it is a very important topic for us to sort of develop our understanding and thinking about like how in practice we can support the families, but also support our volunteers if they come across any situations like that. So thank you so much for your time.